Hi, my name is Danica Wickham, and I teach first grade in Aurora, Colorado. And I want to talk to you about curriculum design. Curriculum design is the intentional organization of course activities and delivery in a classroom. So this really looks at the specifics beyond the broad planning into things like learning objectives and activities and assessments. It's how we figure out how we're going to reach our goals and for our students and the things that we're going to need to do in order to meet the needs of all of our learners. There's a couple different theories and models around curriculum design, including problem-centered design, learner-centered design, and subject-centered design. And I want to talk to you today about subject-centered design. This is the design approach that I am the most comfortable with. It's the way that I learned growing up. It's the way that my school teaches, and I definitely feel like it is a valuable model. The others have pros and cons as well, but I'm going to focus on the subject-centered design. So subject-centered design all revolves around subject matter. It allows for time to focus on one subject and gives students the opportunity to master the content before moving on to the next thing. It is a more teacher-led approach as opposed to a student-led approach, which has pros and cons. But hopefully, with the teacher leading, students are getting developmentally appropriate and material and a systematic approach to their learning. That way, it can really be focused and targeted to what students need. We do have standards and expectations that are placed on us as teachers, and so this is a way that allows for us to address those things with all of our students in the hopes that we can get them where they need to be. There are some cons to this as well. When the teacher is the one in the driver's seat, so to speak, sometimes student engagement and motivation can be lacking. And so for that reason, it's really important to remember to try to include some voice and choice for your students, even within your subject-centered design. This design approach would work really well within my organization. First of all, I teach first grade, and there's a lot of things that we do in first grade which are very straightforward. There's things that the kids just need to know how to do in order to be able to be successful moving on to other grades. For example, reading. I use a subject-centered approach in a lot of ways in my classroom because there's very specific things my kids need to do. And this allows me to hit the standards and to be able to move systematically through content. So that way my students can master one thing before we move on and build to the next thing. So for example, phonics. My students are learning right now about some glued sounds. So like a ing, ung, what sound do those make? How do we know that those make the same sound every time we see them? And can we build words with them? So this is something that is so specific. And while we can try to find it in other areas, it really works best to really narrow in and focus on this and allow my students to understand the rules behind these things before we move on to the next. And it really allows for us to build. So it's also a little bit of a less strenuous approach on teachers because the planning is not as specific. This isn't as much of a differentiated approach, but instead is one that you should use when all students are expected to meet the same expectation. Here we have the same end goal. So for my students learning these glued sounds, can they apply reading and writing these glued sounds? So one thing definitely to keep in mind is to allow that voice and choice so we keep our students' engagement high and not lacking. There are a couple different learning theories which fit in well with this model. And I think the best, most closely related learning theory would be the Behaviorism Theory. This theory is all focused on stimulus and responses, and here the teacher can really control the responses to certain stimuli. So it is definitely more of a product-focused model and that we're looking for a right answer. For example, with my phonics connection before, can the kids use these the right way? It's one thing to be able to talk about it and another thing to be able to do it and apply it in your reading and writing. So the behaviorism theory really fits in well since all the students are trying to get to the same place and have the same end goal. Another theory that I think could fit with this would be the Cognitivist Theory. This theory is more focused on the stages of cognitive development. And with the teacher in the driver's seat, we can really focus on what do our kids need, where are they at cognitively, and how can I help them meet their goals. By breaking things down into chunks, activating their schema and their background knowledge, we can help students learn through this way too. So it's really all about the teacher setting the proper environment for learning within that cognitivist theory. The subject-centered design model can really be beneficial for use in your classroom, and I hope that you can find success using it with your students. Thank you.